Global Green Growth Summit 2013. My name is Chu-Hee Lee, and I will be leading you through the next 2 days. On behalf of the organizers, I would like to welcome all of you and thank all of you for joining us this morning despite your busy schedule. And a special thanks to our overseas participants for traveling long distances to be with us this morning. Since its inception in 2011, the Global Green Growth Summit has been gaining momentum as a leading international venue for public demonstrations of leadership and cooperation to catalyze green growth. As it was just illustrated in the video, this year's summit is being held under the theme of the future of green growth, finance, innovation, and policy, and will focus on the nexus between finance, innovation, and policy to enable green growth. Drawing on the rich experiences of the summit's participants, the Global Green Growth Summit will review progress and explore how financial innovations are helping to accelerate green growth around the world. We hope you will find the next 2 days informative, inspiring, and professionally rewarding. Well, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to officially kick off the opening ceremony by inviting His Excellency, Mr. Lars Rasmussen, the Chairman of the Council at Global Green Growth Institute, to welcome us with his welcoming remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Rasmussen to the stage.
Distinguished participants, esteemed colleagues, welcome and thank you for attending and participating in the 3rd Annual Global Green Growth Summit. It is indeed an honor and a pleasure for me to address a group of such distinguished experts and policymakers. I would like to start by acknowledging the host and partners of this year's summit for putting together such an impressive convening: the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Strategy and Finance, and of course, the organizer, the Global Green Growth Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, 3 years ago, the Global Green Growth Institute was founded here in Korea. Based in large part on Korea's domestic vision of low-carbon green growth, the fledgling organization quickly attracted the support of other governments, including my own, Denmark, and a little more than 2 years later, in October last year, GGGI became an international treaty-based organization with 18 member countries. Last night, 2 additional countries signed our treaty, Mongolia and Rwanda, so the organization now consists of 20 member countries. We have multiple regional and field offices and a growing cadre of experts in the new field of green growth. And of now, GGGI is the world's only international organization dedicated solely to developing and diffusing green growth theory and practice. Aside from the phenomenal pace with which GGGI became an international organization, we have also rapidly expanded our green growth activities. In the 3 short years since our establishment, we have grown to include projects in close to 20 developing countries, helped to lead some of the largest and most comprehensive cooperative research initiatives in the field of green growth, and scaled up our efforts in public-private cooperation by being a key partner in a major international platform for PPPs, the Global Green Growth Forum. So we have come a long way in a short time. And for this enormous accomplishment, we owe thanks to the extraordinary leadership and momentum created by the founding member states, especially GGGI's host nation, the Republic of Korea. As GGGI's membership expands, and as we embark upon new projects in nearly every corner of the globe, the organization is becoming stronger and is forming its own unique identity. And yet, those early days when GGGI was very much a Korean dream will impact and shape the organization for the foreseeable future. As such, we are an international organization with an international agenda and an international mandate, but we retain a bit of a Korean character as we recognize the enormous support we get from the Korean government and the Korean people. As an international organization, GGGI plays an important and unique role in promoting green growth through, among other things, stimulating a South-South dialogue. We believe we can improve the economic, environmental, and social conditions of developing countries by acting as a bridge between developed and developing countries and the public and private sectors. This is a worthy vision indeed. And despite serious concerns surrounding the state of the global economy, and despite concerns about financial commitments to climate change adaptation and mitigation, our vision of green growth is as relevant as ever. And GGGI and its partners are as committed as ever to shifting the growth paradigm to global green growth. To be sure, the road is long and the challenges are great. Thankfully, the commitment to green growth is not shared only among GGGI member countries. As is evidenced by this great summit here today, the commitment is becoming far-reaching and deep. All of you here, in a wide array of capacities, have also made the commitment to green growth. Meetings such as this summit not only serve to explore new ideas and further refine existing green growth policies and concepts, but also help to build momentum and help make green growth a policy norm. These types of meeting and initiatives also play a crucial role in providing policymakers the tools they need to effect change and in bringing to the public knowledge and ideas that we need to bring change from the ground up. Our young organization, our young international organization, GGGI, is also deeply involved in several other initiatives designed to build momentum to shift the growth paradigm. We are one of the lead organizations of the global green growth knowledge platform, which will be holding a session here tomorrow. The Green Growth Knowledge Platform, attempting to build a network of people who share knowledge and information on green growth theories and practices and build the best, most practical green growth policies for governments to adopt. Likewise, the Green Growth Best Practice Initiative, in which GGGI is also taking a lead role, tries to synthesize the myriad of green growth ideas and policies into a set of best practices in order to guide policymakers in planning and implementing green growth in the real world. Green Growth Best Practice, GGBP, is also represented here today and will be holding a side event. These types of initiatives are instrumental in moving green growth forward onto the mainstream and into the realm of policy making and at local and national levels. Of course, all of these things require financial resources, and the conditions of the world economy makes these more challenging than ever before, perhaps. All countries, from the least developed to the most advanced nations, face what they view as more immediate policy priorities. And so, although we have made great strides in bringing green growth into the mainstream, there is concern it could take a backseat in the near future due to fiscal constraints. Solutions to this challenge are one of the central issues this Global Green Growth Summit will address. With the theme, The Future of Green Growth, Finance, Innovation and Policy, at its core, this summit will consider critical finance and investment requirements, innovative approaches to technology development, and policy and fiscal instruments as a transformational drivers. We already know the international community has taken an important step in addressing issues surrounding climate finance by establishing the Green Climate Fund to mobilize and channel climate finance to developing countries. But how it will reach its targets of $100 billion a year by 2020 is at this point up in the air, as are what its methods of delivery will be. It is my hope that the GGGI and the Green Climate Fund will, over time, become what you could call sister organizations. If GGGI is successful in delivering implementation through its Green Growth Planning Program, we will take a big step in helping GGGI partner countries become what you could call GCF ready. I look forward to hearing possible proposed solutions to these and other questions here at the Global Green Growth Summit. We have such an impressive group of people that I am confident that the ideas and proposals that arise from this summit will be important in continuing to move green growth forward. So once again, thank you very much, everybody, and once again, welcome to the Global Green Growth Summit 2013.
Thank you, Chairman Rasmussen, for those inspiring remarks. We hope that the Global Green Growth Summit will continue to play a very important role in ensuring green growth in the future for all. Next, ladies and gentlemen, is a keynote. It is my pleasure and honor to introduce the keynote speaker. His Excellency, Mr. Bharrat Jagdeo, President of the Assembly of the Global Green Growth Institute and former President of Co-operative Republic of Guyana, will honor us with his keynote address. Please give him a warm round of applause.
Thank you very much. Distinguished representatives of governments, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to be in Korea again, and in particular to be in Sando for the first time. This new city is both a symbol of the amazing progress that Korea has made over decades, and of how cities can play a critical role in solving many of the sustainability challenges we face today. I traveled here after a few days in Canada, and while there, I had the opportunity to meet and speak with many young university graduates who are now setting out to make a contribution to the world. I was struck by their idealism, their energy and their commitment to make a difference in the world, but also by their high sense of expectation that those in leadership positions today are prepared to make the decisions that are needed to face our world's challenges. The next generation knows perfectly well the scale and the nature of those challenges. They know about the need for affordable clean energy. They understand the challenges a growing world population presents to long-term food security, and they are very aware of the problems of climate change, deforestation, and the destruction of biodiversity. They don't need to be convinced about these things. They are long past needing a re-articulation or a redefinition of the problem. They want to see solutions. And the truth is, despite the valuable work of people in this room, many of you who are impressive in your own rights, and many others, the scale of action to address these challenges is nowhere near what is needed. So all of us, whether the young people I met or those of us here today, especially the members, network, and friends of the Global Green Growth Institute, need to ask ourselves, how can we deploy our individual and collective power to address this continued global failure of policy? And because of this failure of policy, the topics that we are going to be discussing here today, the focus on innovation and finance, are going to be much more difficult. The policy failure makes it harder to finance innovation and to introduce them at scale. And the private sector, although it is willing to move forward, is looking for a clear sense of policy, a clear signal from the policymakers that this is a sustainable path. Last year, $200 billion were invested in green technology. But what is needed is $2 trillion. And if we have a continued failure of policy, particularly at the global level, I'm afraid we'd never be able to catalyze the innovation and the large-scale financing necessary to sustainably address this problem. So what do? I think the GGGI and its partners can start to address this policy failure in 3 ways. One, we need to keep developing the indisputable case that inclusive green growth is the only form of growth that makes economic and societal sense, and to work to develop the tools that allow that form of growth to be implemented. Two, we need to support those who are building examples of inclusive green growth to prove that large-scale transformative change is possible. And three, we need to deploy the power and legitimacy of our entire membership and networks to advocate for a global policy shift that is needed if progress is to be embedded and sustained. I make my first point because beyond high-level rhetoric, the case for green growth is still not sufficiently accepted or embedded in daily decisions to make leaders, businesses, and citizens fully commit to creating a new economy. In major part, this is because the conversation around green growth is still excessively focused on its costs rather than on its opportunities and benefits, such as wealth creation, jobs, and economic growth. Changing the nature of that conversation is where GGGI and its partners can add real value through world-class analytics which show that what can be achieved through national green growth strategies. Today, the science is clear and the high-level economic argument is made. But more work is needed before green growth is seen as the only rational choice for countries and businesses. And GGGI can move the conversation on, especially because there are many policies that can be implemented at little cost but with real benefits. For example, as the cost of technology decreases, policies to support carbon productivity will improve national competitiveness without even considering the global carbon good that is also delivered. GGGI can also help to popularize the argument for green growth by proving that it is also the indispensable element for the achievement of other priority global objectives. In particular, the point needs to be made that inclusive green growth is essential to continuing global success in alleviating extreme poverty and can be the key to reaching the historic target of eliminating extreme poverty by 2030. Similarly, green growth is indispensable in the global fight for equity and justice. There is no solution to the problems of climate change if 1 billion people, mainly women, continue to use dirty stoves. There is no solution to food security unless hundreds of millions of smallholder farmers are able to participate in a market which pays them a fair price for their food and labor. There is no solution to water shortages unless we are able to create incentives for the stewards of forests and land that are responsible for our rainfall. All of these objectives are part of a hard-headed argument for green growth, as well as supporting the moral and ethical arguments that nobody should be left behind. These arguments are needed because history is only partially useful as a guide. No historical data contains 9 billion citizens consuming energy, minerals, and food. No historical data contains 3 billion people in the middle class. The 21st century is throwing up new challenges which need new arguments. But precisely because of history's limited use as a guide, we also need new examples of how progress is possible. And this leads me to the second point that I want to make about the role of GGGI and its network and friends and people in this room. Plenty of examples are already emerging. Few people know that the greatest greenhouse gas emissions reduction in history happened in Brazil, which since 2005 has reduced greenhouse gas emissions by more than the entire European Union combined, while increasing exports, reducing poverty, and growing strongly. Ethiopia is now one of the fastest growing economies in the world and is aiming to become a middle-income country by 2025 through the achievement of green economy objectives. My own country, Guyana, will cut energy-related emissions by 92% by 2017, more than any country in the developed world, while maintaining 99.5% of our forests, which is larger than England, and investing heavily in a suite of low-carbon social and economic opportunities. Our hosts, Korea, are building on their first rapid transformation from a developing country to a developed country into a second transformation onto a green economic path. There are many other examples, but we need more. GGGI can add real value by becoming the partner of choice for developing countries who will lead the way. Traditional methods of global cooperation do not possess the institutional agility to change at the speed required, but GGGI can possess this agility. This is a new way of working, and contributing developed countries in particular must have the intellectual confidence and vision to see that their own objectives are best served by supporting the homegrown visions of developing countries. However, we must not misinterpret the impressive gains made through examples as being sufficient to deliver the scale of change we need. There are some essential outcomes that can only be achieved through a global agreement. And that leads me to my third point. Despite all the power in world-class analytics to put forward the green growth argument, and all the usefulness of real-world examples, we should not get blinded by the fact that these in themselves cannot deliver a solution at the scale required. The stark reality is that the remaining overarching obstacle to green growth today remains a policy obstacle. This is not because we don't know what policies are needed. Most people understand the broad parameters. Climate policies that create public and private incentives to get the world onto a 2-degree trajectory or less. Sustainable energy and water policies that enable universal access to both. Forest and land use policies that preserve vital biodiversity and ecosystem services. And sustainable agriculture and mining policies to support universal food security and continued global development without excessive resource depletion. It is not policy expertise that is missing. What is missing, and it is a bit cliched, but it is political will, and this is true. And we, in particular, the countries which are members of the Assembly, have the legitimacy, the reach, and the influence to change the policy environment at a national and global level in a way that few can. We cannot afford to fail again in agreeing a global climate deal that contains the level of ambition needed to get onto a 2-degree pathway or less. The agreement must be made by 2015. It must be ambitious. It must be implemented by 2020. And climate financing of the scale agreed in Cancun, namely $100 billion by 2020, must be mobilized. I was on a committee established by the United Nations Secretary General to look at the issue of raising $100 billion by 2020. And we produced a report that shows that it's possible, if there is a will, from various instruments without putting additional burden on the developing world, it is possible to raise these resources, $100 billion by 2020. So if today's leaders and those who influence them sleepwalk through the next few years, the window to make these things happen will close, and they will be responsible for catastrophic derogation of responsibility to the generation which follows. I recognize that the 3 points I make present significant challenges to all our thinking. Each contribution is valuable in its own right, but individually, this is not enough. It is through the combination of all 3 elements, robust analytics around the case for green growth, real-life proof at scale, and an informed and critical mass of countries and citizens advocating for systemic international policy change, that the transformative power of GGGI will become a reality rather than a vision. After GGGI's conversion into an international organization last year and the building of its network in recent years, the Institute and its partners and their wonderful people in this room who have been at the forefront of the debate to make the case that green growth and a green pathway is the only viable pathway for our planet. We can all together match the scale of ambition needed. Settling for less would be a failure of nerves. Thank you very much.